This is Nick Christopher from Mob Tales. Thank you guys for joining me today. We have a very special guest today, my good friend Myron Sugerman, one of the last of the Jewish gangsters, and we are happy to have him here today. Myron, thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Nick. I think I'm the last one. I don't think I'm one of them. I don't think there's anybody left.
Probably not.
I hope I make it. I hope I make it to the end of the interview.
Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You know, I know. Right now, they're all rabbis right now.
Rabbis, accountants, lawyers. All right.
Yep, big difference. So I'm going to start the interview with a couple of questions. And I know we already know each other. We've broke bread a few times, which was awesome.
That's right. We went to the Greek restaurant there.
That's right. So my first question is to get people a little bit familiar with your background. You were very big back in the day, many moons ago, with jukebox machines and poker joker machines, all that stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about how you even got into that? I know your father was somewhat involved in it.
Yeah, my father was on 10th Avenue. That was Jukebox Row. He was there. He started in the machine business in jukebox and pinball machines in 1937 in Newark. After Prohibition ended, he still fooled around a little bit with alcohol. And then one day somebody said, you know, they called him Shuggy, the same thing they called me. Why don't you want to go in the jukebox and pinball machine business? My father was part of the Jewish mob from Newark. Newark was during the Prohibition period of Prohibition, was a very important place because of its access to importation of alcohol from all over, from Canada and so forth. The actual boss we had, the boss of Newark was a long.
Right? Was Jerry?
So no, I'll get to that. Okay. Newark was a city where we had a large Jewish population, large Italian population. Believe it or not, there was a good-sized Greek community on High Street, Newark. But the actual boss of Jersey was somebody by the name of Abner Longy's woman. Longy got the name because it's a derivative of a Yiddish word for somebody who was tall. And he was known as the Al Capone of the East Coast because he brought in all the alcohol. My father was part of that world. My father was born 1900, Newark, New Jersey. So he went into the jukebox and pinball machine business. After the war, they opened up in New York on 10th Avenue and 43rd Street. They became the Bally distributors for New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. I'm trying to summarize it, but just to give you an idea. So I was born into that business because I was born in 1938. And it was a business that the guys that were carryovers from Prohibition, from bootlegging, from prize fighting, from sports betting, for the numbers business, a lot of these fellas went into the jukebox and gaming business. And so that was, I finished school in 1959, and my father wanted to get into the export business of secondhand equipment, jukeboxes and pinball machines, and new equipment as well. The United States was the major exporter. There were no other manufacturers in any other countries. And so I started to travel as a kid when I was 21 years of age. I went all over the world. And ultimately, I ended up with Meyer Lansky's organization as the manager of a slot machine operation, a Bally slot machine operation in Lagos, Nigeria. in 1970. From the years of 1959 to 1970, 71. So I traveled the world and I spent a lot of time in Athens, Greece, Piraeus. We used to ship jukeboxes, electrophoniki. All right, we sent them to as Greece started to modernize after World War II. I don't have to tell you, and the Greek community, the fellows that been around for a number of years will remember that maybe 50% of Greece didn't have electricity after the war. So as the villages, they started to install electricity, every taverna wanted to have a jukebox. All right. And so I sold to all the importers of used jukeboxes in Athens and Piraeus. I had a long history with that community. So in 1970, I ended up in Lagos, Nigeria. Meyer Lansky's organization made a deal with a couple of Lebanese, a couple of Arab gangsters from Lebanon, and a joint venture deal. And they needed somebody to manage the operation. And they enlisted me because of the fact that I was born into that business. I knew everybody and everybody knew me, and they were looking for young blood to for the next generation. So I wound up in Lagos, Nigeria, and I learned the gambling machine business. And the Arabs eventually bought back the business from Bali. They wanted me to stay, but I told them, no, I'm going back to America. And when I came back, a few years later, I was thinking it over in my mind, and I said to myself, why am I going overseas and making other people rich in their countries? We got a third world nation by the name of New York City. You had every community, Russians, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Italians, Greeks, Albanians, everywhere, where Israelis, wherever you turned, you had third world nations. Look at Astoria in the middle 1970s. I think you probably had more Greeks here than you had in Athens, Greece. But I'll get onto that in just a minute. So I started. I came up with the idea, together with others, to put slot machines into bodegas and candy stores and bars and number holes. So I started to distribute and operate machines, and it didn't take more than, I think, 2 months. And I got visited by 2 organizations. One organization was called the FBI, and the other organization was the mob. And one day I get a visit from Genevieve's crew, but there was a battle over me, whether I belonged to the Gambinos, whether I belonged to Philadelphia, and then one day it got resolved. Louis Red, or a fellow by the name of, they called him Louis Red, from Paterson, New Jersey. He was a Genevieve's skipper, captain. He came to see me and he welcomed me home by explaining to me the protocol is that your father was with our crew, with our people, so you're with us. So I had a good relationship. I had a very professional relationship, and I was a businessman. I was a businessman in an unlicensed industry, putting it in more diplomatic terms. I licensed myself. I didn't wait for the government to license me. So we started to expand this business. And of course, once we created the video poker machine business, And it really mushroomed when we started to install dollar bill acceptors in the machines. The technology changed radically. The collections, instead of counting quarters, you are now counting dollar bills. All right. 10, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, hundreds. It's quite an industry. Now, years ago, as I explained to you, I used to go 6, 7, 8 times a year overseas, and I spent quite a bit of time between Athens and also Larnaca, Cyprus. I used to do a lot of business in Cyprus. And when we opened up New York for slot machines, I needed technicians. One of the technicians that used to work for a customer of mine by the name of Lagonicus, John Lagonicus in Piraeus, a fellow by the name of George Demu. And another fellow was, I knew all the Greek importers. They were all good guys. So I needed technicians to fix the slot machines in New York, because this was technology that we needed to train guys how to fix slot machines. So the best and the quickest solution, I was bringing in technicians from Athens, from Israel, from Argentina, Uruguay, England, Ireland, fellas from all over the world, who were the technicians that used to work for customers of mine. And George Demu, he was a terrific technician. I actually used him in Lagos, Nigeria. When I needed technicians in Africa, when I sent to do the job in Nigeria, so I brought George Demu from Athens, from Piraeus, and brought him to Nigeria. And when the Arabs brought back the deal from Meyer Lansky's organization, I came home, but George stayed there until George he did very well with the Arabs. Did real good. And then he went back to Greece. When we opened up in New York, I needed technicians. I brought George. George was loyal to me, and I was loyal to George. He came to the United States, and it didn't take him more than a couple of weeks. He ends up in Astoria on his own. And there used to be a place on where we used to get, what was the name of the
30th Avenue?
Drink coffee. Not on, it was on 31st Street or 30th. It was a cake, a dessert place where you get the, what was the name of the? It was right on the corner.
I know what you're talking about. Let's go. Yeah, let's go Spirgos.
That's it. Okay. So George, he was pretty smart, and he goes into Astoria, and on his own, he finds Spiros Valensis. So Spiros, Nick, does your audience know Spiros?
I'm not sure if they do. They might have heard it from me, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think that at this point you can explain Spiros.
Well, Spiro was the basically the head of the boss of the Greek crew in Astoria under the Lucchese family, and
that's
he used to, and like I know from you, he bought a lot of machines from you to put.
He didn't buy machines. He didn't buy machines. I'll tell the story. Okay. So, but I just needed you to qualify his who he was with regards. Yeah. He ran all the good number of the game rooms of the clubs,
right?
The clubs in Astoria, and the bar booty game. And he owned a bar called the Grecian Gardens on Ditmar and 31st. All right. So George Demo tells him, listen, you should get started with the machine business. He says, well, tell me about the machine business. And George educated him. He says, my friend, the Hebreos, Myron is the Jew in Jersey. Everybody knows him. He's in, family was in the business. He's in the business. So Spiros, he says, okay. He says, tell Myron I want to come for dinner Saturday night. It was summertime. And I told my wife, we have an honored guest coming on for dinner on Saturday night. Barbecue steaks. She put a load of steaks on the barbecue. George shows up. It's Spiros. He was a good-looking guy. You know, he's Sorba the Greek, handsome, very expensive suits, tie, because he used to run the clubs. He'd go to the club on Thursday night, and he didn't go home until Sunday morning. He actually was there nonstop, and but he took a break that night. He comes to see us in Jersey, and my wife was making steaks, and sure enough, he comes in and we get introduced, and good-looking guy and very impressive. His presence, you understood the presence of somebody when you were with Spiros, and explains that he's got these clubs and so forth and so forth. He's eating a steak, and then he says, look, he says, I'm going to tell you something. He said, I want to tell you how I became the boss of Astoria. he removes his suit jacket, unloosens his tie, takes his tie off, opens up his shirt, right, unbuttons his shirt, all right, and he wasn't wearing an undershirt. And all of a sudden he says, you see all these scars here? All those are the bullet holes that I survived when they tried to kill me. He says, but not to concern yourself. He says, revenge was taken. And that's how I became the boss of Astoria. So I told my wife, I said, Clara, after a story like that, give him another steak. Spiros, like that, he had another steak. And we agreed to start with the machines. But Spiros was probably one of the greatest teachers that I ever had in my life. We took a liking to each other. Although it took him a little while to figure me out. And one day when he was convinced, he finally, something I did that I don't remember exactly what it was that I said to him that convinced him that I was a little bit of I had a little bit of a street history and experience. I said something to him that really struck a chord with him. And he says to me, my God, I always had you rated as a bureaucrat. I said, no, Spiros, I also have some long history of street experience. So I'm going to tell a couple of good stories about Spiros because we've talked about them, but they're wonderful stories.
Well,
I had a great effect.
Before you say anything, just to let the people know that the gentleman you're speaking of, who I do know personally as well, I know his whole family, he's doing a life term right now. Well, he's not now, he's been in jail since 92 for basically a crime he really didn't commit. So I just want people to know where he's at.
You know what, Nick? Let's talk about that at the end after because it's a very important part of the story is
Hmm.
what you just told. But I'd
Ah,
like, we could talk about that in detail, and I want to talk about it in detail
okay.
because the man was really screwed.
Oh, yeah.
Is there was this what they implicated, what he was implicated in was a falsehood, and the man suffered a terrible injustice, he and his family. Spiros took a liking to me, and I took a liking to Spiros, but um, you in Spiros, he was like, I watched him, and I watched how he operated. Um, he would put out an offer which was really a temptation, and he would wait until to see how the individual was going to react. One day he gives me a call, and he says to me, take a ride in New York. I'm going to buy you dinner. Come to a store. I'm going to buy you dinner. I go for dinner. And he says, listen, I need 30 games. I need 30 poker machines. He says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 5,000 a week. So I said to him, no, Spiros. He got a hot as a firecracker. He said, I'm offering you $5,000 a week. That's $250,000 a year for 30 stinking machines. And you want, what do you want? You want more, huh? I said, no. He said, what do you mean, no? What's the reason? I said, Spiros, no. That's not the problem. I said, the problem is, I know you very well. If I accept that $5,000, all right, the first week you're going to give me $5,000. The second week I'm going to come back, and you're going to say to me, "Isis Klefty, you're
You're
a
a thief.
thief.
That's what it means. Yeah.
You're a thief. You look to rob me. You want to take advantage of me. You think I'm stupid? I'm gonna give you $5,000 every week. I just wanted to prove that you were greedy." So I said to him, I says, you see, Spears, I know you're pretty good. All right. I'll tell you what I'll do though. I'll give you the deal. Give me $1,000 a week. He says, you son of a gun, you. I said, of course, for $1,000 a week, you can't rob me. I got you over a barrel. All right.
That's funny.
And that was I didn't get rich on the deal. I didn't lose any money. I made money with them for years. But the most important thing was a lesson to be shared is that you're dealing with the smartest foxes on the face of the earth. This man, he was absolutely brilliant. He had a mind like a trap door. If you didn't understand how to deal with Spiros, as long as if you gave him a fair deal, all right. If you gave him a fair deal, you're okay. But by the way, that's not just Spiros. That happens to be a rule of the mob. You give him a fair deal, you got no problem. If you get greedy, you're lucky you don't get a bullet.
Yeah.
So Spiros, I'll tell you a great story. I get a phone call on a Monday morning. A surprise, Spiros, the guy, the girl that answered the phone said, Spiros is on the Spiros. He never calls me. I used to go every Sunday morning to pick up whatever monies that we were doing at the time, besides the machines, some other business, some other machine business. Spiros calls me. He said, I got two brothers here from Greece, two Greek brothers from Toronto. He says, they're looking for a game called the quarter horse machine. I said, quarter horse machine. Yeah, Spiros. What a coincidence. I just bought 56 machines out of Paris. A Jewish guy over there that I knew real well. He tried to operate the machines, but the French government knocked them out. Marty Bromley. So I called him up and I bought the 56 machines from Marty Bromley. I paid him $2,000 a piece. I said, Spiros, I just bought 56 machines for $2,000. He said, okay, I'll call you back. He calls me back about a half an hour later, and he says, we just sold the machines for $3,500 each. That means that we make $80,000. All right. You make 40, I make 40. I said, fine. I said, but I want to let you know, Spiros, these machines are hound's teeth. You can't find them. You're doing these people a good favor. He said, listen, they mentioned some good friends of mine from Montreal, some Greeks. And I said, no, the deal is the deal. I'm backing you. I just want to let you know that you gave these two brothers a hug and a kiss. So he hangs up the phone. I'm just waiting for, anyways, the deal's the deal. So I guess he's going to call me back and tell me what. About in the afternoon, that same day, I get a phone call from some Puerto Rican kid out of Brooklyn. You remember me? Yeah, sure, I remember. He says, I got two guys here that want to buy quarter horse machines. You got two guys there that want to buy quarter horse machines. He says, do you have any? I says, maybe I do. Why don't you bring those two brothers over here? I'm in Jersey. This kid's in Brooklyn. And all of a sudden, an hour and a half later, the door opens. And I said, Kalaspera says, Philo move. Hey, how are you, my brothers? I said, how do you know we're Greeks? I said, I don't only know that you're Greeks. I know that you're the two Greeks that were with Spiros this morning. All of a sudden, I said, oh my God, is this Hebreos? You're the Jew. I says, yeah, I'm the Jew, and you're the Greeks. And you're the two that were with Spiros this morning. He says, great, we can do business. I said, no, we can't. Yes, we can do business, but only with Spiros. We got to go back to Spiros. You started with Spiros. In other words, they tried to run them to get the machines cheaper.
Yeah.
So I tell the Puerto Rican kid, this is not a Puerto Rican deal. It's a Greek deal. It's Jews and Greeks. You go back to Brooklyn. Leave these guys with me. And I said to the brothers, listen, you're going to have to make up a decision as to whether you're going to go back to Astoria. You either go back to Astoria or you go back to Toronto. If you go back to Astoria, you're going to have to explain to Spiros how you found me.
Not a good idea.
And I'm not so sure that Spiros are going to be happy about it.
No.
So you're going to have to make a decision, either one or the other. They say, let us think this through. And sure enough, they're consulting with each other. And after a short while, they come back to me and say, listen, we need those machines so desperately. He said, we'll go back to Astoria. I said, fine, we'll go back to Astoria. I tell my kid, Louis, start up the engine. We're going to Astoria tonight. And we drive to Astoria. He had the bar called the Grecian Gardens. I walk in. The bartender's name was Marcos. I said, Marcos, how are you? Would you reach out to all those clubs and see if you can get Spiros? Because you didn't have cell phones in those days. You didn't have beepers. So he starts to make calls to the clubs, and sure enough, he finds Spiros, and he tells him your friend from New Jersey is here with the two Greek brothers that were here this morning. I don't know if Spiros had an airplane, if he had a jet plane. He hangs up the phone, and all of a sudden, coming through the front door is Spiros, and he gives me a big wink with the right eye, which already I see that he's going to make his move, and he starts to hug the two brothers. He said, "My God Almighty," he says, what a small world. This is fantastic. This is party time. I want to get the gominas. We're going to go to Atlantic City. We're going to drink. We're going to have a party. All right. And we're going to shoot craps. And we're going to Atlantic City. This calls for a party. I said to Spiros, I got to get back to Jersey. You go and have a party. I don't know. It was 2 days, 2 nights later, I get a phone call. He comes back from Atlantic City. He says, send your man over. I got a deposit for $50,000. Louis, go pick up the package from Spiros. He goes, comes back $50,000. Spiros tells me, listen, ship the machines from Europe. When the machines get to Canada, you and I are going to go up there. All right. A month later, machines arrive in Canada. Spiros, I tell him, Spiros, the machines are, let's go. All right, meet me at LaGuardia Airport. And I bring my technician with me, the kid that really knows the quarter horse machines, to explain the games to these guys, to make sure that they know how to fix them, repair them, and so forth. And we fly up to Toronto, and we go to a place. Now there's no two brothers. Now it's not only two brothers. There's the brother-in-laws. There's the uncles. There must have been about a dozen guys there, all had an investment in the machines. Those machines were making a lot of money in all the clubs in Toronto. So, anyways, everybody starts smoking cigarettes. I'm going to wind up dying in this place. I've never seen so many cigarette smokers in my life. Anyway, Spiros, genius of geniuses. He says to the brothers, he says, where are the machines? He says, in the warehouse. Let's go through the door, and you go to the warehouse. You go to the warehouse. We come back, and of course, everybody's talking Greek. But Spiros interrupts every few minutes to explain to me what he's talking about. All of a sudden, he says to these two guys, "Oh my God, this is a terrible, terrible situation." What do you mean it's a terrible? He says, "You see, they ship the big machines, the king size machines from Europe, and my friend over here, Myron, he ordered the small machines. See, so when I quoted you 3,500, that was on the small machine, but now they ship the big machine, and according to the contract, Mr. Myron's got to pay $3,000 more per machine." You had to see the Adam's apples and the eyeballs on all these guys. And Spiros puts his hand in his pocket, and he says, "I'm going to give you back your $50,000 deposit." He don't have $50,000 in his pocket. He's got another pack of cigarettes in it still, if he even had that. So these guys, they start, no, Spiros, we need the machines, but we'll have to figure out how many we can operate, how much we can come up with. So they everything did all the calculations. They're only able to buy 20 machines. We take the money for the 20 machines, all right, and we already got a profit of $18,000 on that own 36 machines, no charge. I said, Spiros, let's get out of here. We'll go to the other side of Toronto. I got some Russian Jews that are like family for me. They operate, and they're sharp operators. We went over to Concord, gave the 36 machines to my friend Val with his father, Joseph. And we cut up a deal that they would operate the machines. We'd have split the income 3 ways. And that went on for 5 years. All right. When we're coming home that night, Spiros, he was so happy, you know, like, did you see the eyeballs on those guys when I went up to 6,500 from 3,500? He says, one second. Spiros, I said to him, Spiros, how do you understand life? These guys, if they didn't end run you, they had the machines for 3,500. He says to me, what do you know about Greek mythology? Well, I said, I studied it. And I studied literature. I'm pretty well educated. I went to Bucknell University, graduated political science, history, languages. Oh, he says, good, good. He said, let me tell you about Achilles. He says, everybody's got what's known as an Achilles heel. All right. He says, let me ask you a question. How many packs of cigarettes did I smoke today? 1, 2, 3. You smoked 4 packs of cigarettes.
Wow.
He says, oh, you're right. You're a good observer. He said, who paid for the cigarettes? I said, well, you kept pulling the money out every time to pay the girl that when she brought the cigarettes. He said, that's right. He says, you're educated, right? I said, well, you know, want to be modest about it. I'm not going to win any Nobel Prizes, but I'm pretty well educated. He says, well, good. He says, what does it say on the side of this pack of cigarettes? I look at the cigarettes and says, schmuck, if you smoke, you die. Now look, he says, look at me. I'm supposed to be a smart guy, huh? They call it a wise guy, right? I'm supposed to be the sharpest Greek in the story, right? Look how stupid I am. My Achilles heel. I'm smoking cigarettes. I'm buying the cigarettes. I'm paying for it. And there's a sign on each pack of cigarettes that says I'm going to die. He says, you see these 2 brothers? You know what their Achilles heel was? Greed. They got greedy. He had an insight and an understanding of life that was exceptional. It was very, very smart, very smart. And, you know, he was with the Lucchese, it's true. Mm-hmm. But he always understood. I remember one time I came to the Grecian Gardens, it was Christmas time, and the table had a long table set up that night, and they had the lamb's heads on the Greeks like lamb's heads, right?
Yeah, during Easter, usually.
How do they call it?
Oh, you mean the lamb you're talking about?
Yeah, the lamb's heads.
What do they call it?
Yeah, in Greek.
Oh, I didn't.
So the Italians and the Greeks, and the Sephardic Jews, they eat lamb's heads. That night, they had a big celebration of Italians and Greeks. But Spiros always told me, he said, don't ever think for one moment that you and I are in the same category, because they're Italians. He said, I'm Greek, you're a Jew. He says, but they'll always look at, you'll never be part of their organization. I'll never be part of that organization. Greek, this is from Spiros. He says, the Italians rule the underworld. Don't ever forget that. He was a great teacher. It wasn't that he was saying anything prejudicial. He was stating a fact.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's true.
It's a fact that the Italians ruled. And he was with the Lucchese's. And he was a wonderful teacher of life. I was very fond of him.
Well, there was somebody else that was a teacher of life to you as well, Jerry Katina.
But okay, but I'm finishing up the story
Okay.
of Spurs. There were a lot of good teachers. Nick,
Yeah.
you know it as well as I because you've been around.
Hmm.
Every man, we have a teaching in Jewish wisdom. They ask the question, "Who's a wise man?" And the answer is one who learns from every man. Everybody's got a story to tell you, and there's got a lesson to learn. Spurs was exceptional, so I wanted to finish his story. Oh, Spurs used to say to me like this. He loved the horses. On Sunday morning,
Yeah.
when he closed the club on Sunday morning, go home, shower, shave, clean himself up, put on a nice set of clothes, and he'd go to the racetrack. And then he used to tell me, I used to bet every three-legged horse that ran backwards and hated his jockey. He would empty out. He'd lose his money. He'd lose his money at the racetrack, all that money that he made during the week. On Mondays, guys would come to his office, all the Shylocks in New York, all the money lenders, and they would lend him money, and he paid the weight. And then he used to say to me, "Listen to me. One day I'm going to teach these son of a bitches a lesson." He said, "I'm going to give him a call. Every Shylock in the city of New York, I tell you, come see me, all right? But come heavy. If you gave me 1,000, I want 2,000. I want 3,000. I want 5,000. Give me the maximum." He says, "I'm going to get from every Shylock in New York as much as I possibly can on a Monday morning. And by Monday afternoon, I'm going to put all that money in a suitcase, and I'm going to go to Kennedy Airport, and I'm going to take a one-way flight to Athens, Greece."
You should have done that.
He should have done that. Now,
Yeah.
the rest of the story, you and I will explain to your listeners that the man, he was he somehow or another got implicated in an attempted killing of Fat Pete Chioda.
Well, Sammy Nallo was the guy. He was supposed to, had an issue with that. He went to Pete Chioda for help, and Pete Chioda was the one who killed him, who sent two guys to kill Sammy Nallo. That's
Sammy the Arab. Sammy the Arab.
That's right.
Where was Sammy from?
So from meaning country.
Yeah, where was he? Syrian or Lebanese or something?
I think he was Syrian, I believe.
Right.
I believe so. I'm not sure 100%, but I think he was Syrian.
So Fat Pete Chioda was a captain at that point, right?
Right. That's correct. That's correct.
Was he Spiros' captain?
Yes, he reported to Pete.
I thought that Spiros was with Tick. What was his name?
Yeah, Christy Tick, but Christy Tick gave the authority to Fat Pete to collect from Spiro every month.
I see, because I went to the baptism of what was his name? Frankie, the little boy, Spiros' son.
Oh, Foti.
What was his name?
Foti. Foti was his name. F-O-T-I. Foti.
Foti, that's right. So I went to the baptism with my wife. That was one hell of what a party. That was the time that Jimmy, his brother, was locked up.
Right, right. Spiro sang at the baptism too.
It was terrific.
It was
what a party. We've never seen anything like that in our lives. After the musicians first come out the singles, then comes the $5 bills, then comes the 10 on the floor, and the workers would come with a broom and sweep up all the money.
That's right. And the money would go to the band. That's what
a party! What a party! A party of parties. So, anyways, you're telling me that so Petey Chioda was assigned by Christie, right?
Correct. Correct.
And then how did Spiros end up being implicated in the attempted murder of Petey?
Well, not Petey, Sammy. He went to, like I said, you know how it is in mob protocol. You know, he has to go to his, you know, his representative. So he went to Vicar Musso first and
Right.
Gastein to ask for permission to see what he could do about this guy Sammy, who keeps coming to his clubs trying to take over. And Amuso told Spiro, is this guy with anybody? Is he connected to anybody? And Spiro said no. He said, well, you take care of it yourself. He said, no. He said, I'm kicking up to you every month. You should have the protocols. You take care of me.
Right.
So that's when they gave Fat Pete the
assignment,
the responsibility to take care of this guy Sammy. But Spiro never told Pete, go kill the guy. He said, listen, I got an issue. Can you help me out with this? Doesn't mean go whack the guy. So he sent two guys out there, this guy Richie and this other guy Mike Spinelli, and they killed Sammy.
Mike was a little guy, an old man.
No, Mike was, well, not now. He made not then. He was a young guy. You know, he wasn't that old.
Oh, I'm confused. And there was an old timer that was around Spiros, an old timer by the name of Mike, an Italian guy.
Oh yeah, Mike Grillo, Mike the Italian. Yeah, Mike Grillo, his name was.
Huh?
Mike Grillo.
Grillo?
That's correct, Mike Grillo. That's right.
I remember that he was.
They called him Mike the Italian.
Right. Okay.
And you know, after they killed Sammy, they killed him in one of Spiro's travel agencies in Astoria. And when Sammy was dying, when the authorities arrived, he told, Spiro was supposed to meet me here. So, and then they used that was part of the evidence, I guess you could say. And then Fat Pete testified against Spiro in court when he became an informant.
Uh-huh.
And Fat Pete testified that Spiro was responsible for Sammy's killing, that he issued the contract, that's not what happened. Fat Pete was just trying to cover for himself. That's basically what happened.
Horrible, because he got a 45-year sentence, didn't he?
I'm sorry?
He got a 45-year sentence, no?
No, he got a life sentence.
It was a life.
He was supposed to he originally got pinched for racketeering, for gambling, stuff like that. So think about it. If he got really pinched for gambling and a little racketeering, he would have done what? Maybe 5 years, 7 years, maybe. But
I got a 20. I would think mine was a 27 to 33 month sentence for basically the same thing as Spiros.
They tacked on the murder charge, which became life.
That made it gave him a life sentence.
Right.
He'll never see the light of day.
Unfortunately, not.
How's his health?
Not good. He's not doing well. He was in Allenwood, PA. I went to visit him a couple of years ago, but since then he was having issues with his eyes, cataract, couldn't really see well, arthritis in his hands, and they moved him to Texas to a prison hospital, thinking it would help. It really didn't, and then they sent him right back to Allenwood again. So that's where he is now.
You know, Spiros, his family, where he came from in Greece, some small island or something like that. Do you remember where he came from?
I forgot now. I know it's not too far from where Sparta is, but I forgot the name of the.
So he actually was under German occupation, and the Nazi occupation when he was there as a kid growing up.
That's correct.
So he came to the United States, and I think he first went to Boston.
Yes, his father His family moved to Boston. His father opened a restaurant in Boston. He worked there for a little while, but you know the way he was. You know, he was always thinking out of the box.
So, you know, he was an incredible mechanic, card mechanic. He was a card chief. He
Yes,
was
yes, that's
he,
how he began.
he was probably one of the greatest around.
Good card shark. Very good.
He was just sensational.
Yes.
He self taught himself how to cheat in cards, and I remember Jimmy. I love Jimmy. I love both of them. And it, he tells a story that you know they would go all over the United States, and they put him in a club, and he play like a dummy for the first, you know, the sucker play like a fool one night, second night, third night, you know, until everybody thought that he was a rank sucker. And then on the last night, he'd empty everybody out.
Yep.
So Jimmy tells a story one night, uh, makes a real score, and he has some drinks, and he's tired. He goes to sleep. Some thief gets into his room that night and goes in his pockets and robs him of his money. So Spirits wakes up in the morning. He says, I got robbed. So Jimmy says, you rob everybody else.
What's the difference?
What are you complaining about? You rob everybody. But he's self-educated. He was very smart. What a shame.
Yes.
Okay, so about Jerry Katina. My father was Jerry Katina bought into my father's business in 1940, 45, 46. The bosses of Newark were, I mentioned, Abner Longies Wellman and a fellow by the name of Joe Doc Stature. A lot of people don't know with the fact that the Jews were on an equal level at some point with the Italians. Never really equal, but they had their own organization, and it was quite exactly close enough. So Doc Stature sold out. He was the original partner with my father and another fellow by the name of Abe Green. My father and Abe Green met over a load of stolen alcohol in 1935. And they became very, very close friends and decided to start with the jukebox and game business. In 1937, 38, Doc Stature was the money guy. He sold out and went to Vegas. He went first to Los Angeles, but he opened up the Moulin Rouge nightclub. And then he was eventually with Meyer Lansky at the after the Flamingo at the Sands Hotel. And Jerry Katina bought him out, and Jerry Katina ultimately became the boss of the Genovese crime family.
Right.
Now he was that was somebody completely in a category, in a class all by himself. My father used to say, my father may rest in peace, used to say about Mr. Katina, that man could have been the head of the Pentagon. He could have been the head of General Electric. He was just a brilliant administrator. And of course, being around those kind of people, you learn to watch your P's and Q's. You learn to dot your I's and cross your T's and everything to perfection, because you don't want to make a mistake around those kind of around people of that element. Right. Mr. Katina is the one that actually put together the Ballet Manufacturing Company deal that at a time when it was Ballet was in 1960, 62, 63, they were in foreclosure. They hadn't yet come out with the Bally slot machine. But Mr. Katina saw that it was a visionary, saw that the manager of Bally Manufacturing Company came to see him and explained to him the circumstances and the technology that they thought that they had. And Mr. Katina was the one that put within a couple of hours, made some phone calls to some top Jews around the country and raised the funds in order to pull Bally out of foreclosure. They bought it at the liquidation value, so that it was a no risk deal. And then somebody that developed the hopper system for the Bally slot machines, they owned the hopper. They built the machines, and the rest is all history. By the way, Mr. Katina was so well connected. He contacted Dean Martin and told him, listen, I'm sending Abe Green to Las Vegas. He's my partner. He's a good friend of mine. I want you to introduce him to the hotel operators, all the hotel innkeepers in Vegas, Reno, so that they can test the Bally slot machine. And that's it. The rest is all history.
Wow. In your time, did you ever have the opportunity to even meet Meyer?
I met him in Israel, 1970. I met him in Israel in 1970. My father's partner, the name I mentioned, Doc Stacher, had made a deal with Kennedy, with Robert Kennedy, to accept exile from the United States in exchange for the government dropping income tax charges against Doc Stacher. And Doc Stacher accepted it. And he made life in Israel. So I used to go to Israel all the time. And of course, when I would go, I would stay at the same hotel as the old man with Doc stayed with. Doc Stacher, my dad, and my father, they all grew up together. Doc Stacher, Longie's woman. Myron Lansky used to come to Newark. My father was in a, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but Doc Stacher said to me one Jewish Shabbat, Sabbath, we're going to eat lunch today at the hotel. I want you to be here. I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine. And I showed up at the hotel. And all of a sudden, Meyer Lansky walked in. And Meyer Lansky sat down next to me. And he says to me, your father was a very dear friend of mine. My father was an investor together with Abe Green in the Hotel Riviera in Havana. And only because of by luck of circumstances, my father's friend and partner, Abe Green, said, 6 months before the revolution, not that he had any idea about the politics or about Castro and about the revolution or Batista, the dictator. He says, but he didn't want to testify at grand jury of any connection with Meyer Lansky because they were being investigated for organized crime. Longie's woman got my father and Abe Green a buyer from Cleveland to buy out their interest in Hotel Riviera. My father and Abe Green are the only ones that didn't lose any money. They sold out 6 months before the revolution, and they made money. They actually made money.
Oh, Myron, I lost you.
Yeah, somebody was calling. Gotta get rid of it. So the Abe Green and Shuggy, they sold out.
I lost you again.
So Meyer Lansky, we had a very nice conversation, and he told me, "Listen, I'm here in Israel. I'm looking to."
Myron, I don't see you again.
This guy's calling me. Let me get rid of him. I just got rid of him. I'm back.
That's all right.
Okay, so he told me that he's going to stay. He wanted to immigrate to Israel because there was an indictment pending for him, and he knew that the government was desperate. That was the Nixon-Mitchell government that was desperate at that time, and to nail Meyer Lansky. And he wanted to stay in Israel, but there was so much pressure that eventually the Nixon government leaned on Golda Meir. She was the prime minister, and says, "You send a Jew back to America. We give you $3 billion a year. Who the hell are you to tell me you're not going to say that?" And that was the deal. But anyways, the reason Meyer Lansky came to the hotel, it wasn't a social visit. He was concerned. He and Doc were concerned at that time about Meyer Lansky. I'm sorry, about Jerry Katina. Jerry Katina, back in New Jersey, had been locked up with 18 other mob guys for refusal to testify to a New Jersey grand jury on organized crime after being granted immunity. You know, once you're granted immunity, you either talk or they lock you up. So, of course, none of these guys were prepared to talk, and sure enough, they all got incarcerated. They wound up in a place called Yardsville. It was Yardsville prison. And Meyer Lansky and Doc were concerned about Jerry Katina, because Jerry Katina ruled on the rake off. All right, out of Vegas. So Meyer Lansky and Doc were concerned for the. They were concerned for their what do you call it? For their share of the rake off, right? And I thought at the time that the story was the judge told all these guys, all these figures, these individuals, you own the key to the cell. You talk, you're out. You know, and that was the we spent the entire afternoon. He was a very nice man. You know, he was together with Longies Woolman, those two, Benny Siegel, Doc Statcher,
On the Rothstein,
Lepke Bookhalter, Murder Incorporated. All those guys were all from that era. Right?
yes, that's correct.
So that was the one time, one and only time. But it was, he didn't come to see me because he didn't even know that I was going to Africa to work in the slot machine business. But unfortunately, he lived a very, very torturous life. But eventually the Israeli government sent him back, and he went to trial twice. Eventually, the government dropped the charges against him.
Right, I remember. Well, outside of Meyer, I mean, we'll see how much time we have left. But I did want to ask you something before we, because you answered a lot of the questions already. Oh, I lost you again, Myron.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I did want to just tell everybody about your book, The Last Jewish Gangster, From Meyer to Myron, so everybody would know about it. And I'm going to just show it to everybody. Here it is. It's an awesome book. I had the pleasure of reading it, which was great. I read it. I went through it pretty quick.
I like the book.
I'm sorry?
I like what you wrote.
Oh, thank you. Well, I tried.
Why don't you tell everybody about your book? It's a terrific one.
Oh, the one about the Greek cruise?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, Mafia Ties, the Greek syndicates. Yes, I mean that is actually getting republished. It should be out about a month from a Canadian publisher.
These stories are part of the American story. Our conversation is not just entertaining, it's informative, it's educational.
That's correct.
It's part of the American story, the great American story. The mob played a very significant role.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, Myron, I don't want to keep you too long. I mean, we did go a little bit longer than we expected, which was fine, which is great. I love talking with you. We could talk, you and I, forever.
Because it's a fascinating subject.
Yes, exactly. But I do want to say that I'm very happy to have had you on the show. I thank you very much for taking your time.
You're going to put this on YouTube?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Myron. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Listen, Happy New Year to you.
You too, my brother. This is Nick Christopher from Mob Tales, and thanks, guys, for looking at the show. Subscribe, like, share, do whatever you like, comment.